And Karen, you mentioned about you never chanted with intention, and you can do the right thing with the wrong intention. You can do the wrong thing with the right intention. And a lot of times when we look to do the right thing, we look at it more in a materialistic way, not like, why am I doing this, but what's the right way to do it? So for example, if I teach you how to chant, I could say, sit straight, and then you should hear the mantra, and you should pronounce it properly, and it's all the technical side. But more important is, why are you doing this? You know, because some people, when they chant mantras, are doing it to impress other people. Hey, I meditate, I'm cool. And so it ruins the whole reason to do the meditation, because the meditation is for divine connection, for yoga, for purification, for upliftment, for becoming better and helping other people become better. But you could do it for the wrong reason. I want to be the best meditator in the world. I want to get the gold medal for meditation. Then it's all ego. So just because you're chanting doesn't mean it's perfect. The intention is what's most important. And maybe you're not chanting so perfectly, but your intention is pure. That I want to become pure. Through chanting this mantra, I want to be better. I want to show up better for the world. I want to show up better for people. I want to awaken my higher consciousness, understand who I am, my divine connection. So even though you're not doing it technically properly, you're actually doing it properly because you have the right intention. And I was just happy you talked about that, because I wanted to bring that idea into this discussion of purpose. Because you could have a purpose which is very noble for the completely wrong reason. Isn't it? You agree? Possible? You know, I'm going to save the world. Why do you want to save the world? Because I want to be known as the person who saved the world. Oh, that's not why you want to save the world. It's not why you want to help people so you can be famous as the guy or the girl who helps people. So I think that's very important when we talk about purpose. We go to a more fundamental level and ask the question, well, if you're discovering your purpose, what's your why? Why? Is the why pure? Is the intention good? Is the intention to uplift yourself and the world? Or is the intention to get something for yourself, take advantage of others, and so forth? So I think that's an important question we need to ask ourselves in everything we do. Why am I doing this? What's my motive? And sometimes, if you're honest, you realize motives are not always pure. Even though what I'm doing may be good, it may be beneficial, but my motive may not be. My motive may be impure. It may be to gain some, I may be doing something spiritual with the motive to gain something material. It's possible, right? Have you ever seen that? Someone's doing something so-called spiritual, but the motive is material. So that's the beginning point. You want to go ahead? The topic is finding your purpose. So I was just saying, you can find a purpose, but you could have the wrong reason for finding it. And so you kind of defeat yourself. You pull the rug out from under you. You found what you should do, but you haven't done it for the right reason. So when you talk about purpose, you have two levels of purpose. You have on the physical dimension and you have on the spiritual dimension. So the physical dimension is, what are you going to do physically? What are you going to contribute? What kind of work are you going to do? What are you going to contribute to this world that you're living in? And that can include contributing, taking care of yourself, your health, your emotional state. And then you have the spiritual purpose, because you could have clarity on your material purpose, and you could completely neglect your spiritual purpose and just, have no spiritual inclination. Just, okay, I know my dharma materially. I know what I should do. I'm inspired to do A, B, and C, and I do it, but I can be totally spiritually blind, have no vision of a higher purpose. Why am I on this planet? what's my divine connection? What happens after I die? Have I been here before? All these questions. So that's spiritual purpose. And ideally, you want to combine both so that your material purpose can support your spiritual purpose. But not everybody can do that circumstantially, or not everybody understands how. But still, if you find your material purpose, you also have to find your spiritual purpose. So that's an important distinction. So let me tell a story. I want to see if you can relate to this. So when I was a teenager, like in the late teens, and I think this is true for many, many people who are on a spiritual path, I started asking questions like, you go to school and they say, you should become successful, or you should go into this subject, or your parents say, you should do this. And I was like the little kid who would always say, why? You want to come? You're getting cut out. Like a little kid that says, you should brush your teeth. Why? You should eat your spinach. Why? The little kid. I was like the older kid doing the same thing, but in a philosophical way. So my father says you should do this. Society says you should do this. Teachers say you should do this. Religious leaders say you should do this. And I was thinking, I don't even know why I'm alive. So why should I do anything if I don't even know why I'm here in the first place? So I was asking why, because why is about purpose, isn't it? When you don't know the why, then you're kind of without purpose. So everyone's saying what to do, but they're not telling me why. And I was thinking, well, I can know what to do, but if I don't know why, then there's no impetus to do it. So as a student, I was preoccupied with the why. Like, why am I here? What's it all about? And then I got preoccupied. I don't know why. It just made sense. I got preoccupied with the idea that, okay, I'm here on this planet. I was started thinking like this when I was 18. So I'll be here for 50, 60, 70 more years. And then what? And then what happens? Then it's all over. So I would think, that doesn't really make sense. I'm here 50, 60, 70 years, and it's finished. And for a lot of people, that 50, 60, 70 years isn't even that great. And most of that time, you're either in school or working. So, okay. I never really liked school that much. I like working less. And that's basically what I'm doing most of my life. And then, when it's time to enjoy life, you're too old, you retire, and, it's like you can't really do much. I had a teacher, he said, you should retire. You should take the first, from your age of 20 to 30, that's when you should retire, because then your body is strong. You can actually do things. So I kept thinking, all right, this it doesn't make sense to me. What's the whole thing? What is it? And then I'm looking around at people, and people are happy on Friday night because they had a lot of beers or they smoked a lot of pot. But during the week, they're not looking that happy. And most people really don't like their jobs. So I'm looking at this and I'm saying, if there's a creator who loves us, why would he create something like this? This doesn't make sense, where you end up spending most of your life studying and working. And you have to take drugs to be happy so you can forget how miserable you are. Because basically that's why we take drugs, right? Well, I had some good drugs. They really made me forget how miserable I was. That's a good drug, right? So I would look at all this, and I'd think, there's got to be some answer to this. Otherwise, I was in this state why I was at university. I went to school in Berkeley, and I would think, why should I study anything? Why should I do anything if I don't even know? And then here was the icing on the cake. Now, the icing on the cake. Now, I grew up in the 60s. some of you may have been there in your past life. So maybe what I say will resonate with you. You might have been there. So it was a very interesting time. And this story will reveal how interesting it was. You know, in those days, it was very easy for professors to get tenure. And tenure means basically do anything you want once they teach. I think it's more rare now to give tenure to a professor, because once he has tenure, he's like in. He can do anything or say anything, and the university can't do much. So I took a class. It was a philosophy class. And the reason I took it is because the word was out. There's no homework, and he doesn't make you come to class. I thought, oh, it's my kind of class. You know, this was, you know, Berkeley, California, 1969. You know, you could imagine, you know, this was like, you know, the ultimate goal of university was get good grades without going to class. That was basically the program. And then, you know, just play music and hang out. So he had a lecture hall. And every seat was full, and there was only standing room because everybody wanted this class. And this is exactly what he said. You may not believe me, but just remember, Berkeley, 1969, those of you who aren't American, Berkeley is one of the craziest, most liberal places in the world. And 1969 was one of the craziest, most liberal times. And we go to class, and the first thing he says is, I don't know anything. And I'm thinking, that makes two of us. But you're a professor of philosophy, you're supposed to know. And I was kind of inclined, you know, like, I'll just become a professor, because I was thinking, well, if I leave university, I have to go out in the real world, and I don't really want to be part of that. So university is kind of like in between the real world, and you don't have to fully enter it. So I thought, yeah, I'll become a philosophy professor. That would be interesting. Then I could ask all my questions, you know. And so he says, I don't know anything. The next thing he says, therefore, you don't have to come to my classes because I can't tell you anything. So it's the kind of professor I like. And then he said, just write a term paper on anything you want, give yourself a grade, and turn it in. Okay, that was a good class. That's why there were 600 people signed up, because the word got out. That was his class. So, but the thing that struck me was, here's a philosophy professor who's supposed to be able to philosophize, understand, you know, what's philosophy? To question, analyze, and so forth. And he's saying, I don't know anything. It was like that made such a deep impression on me. And I was in the university thinking, at this point, there's nobody here who can actually tell me, why am I on this planet? What am I supposed to do? And what's going to happen after I, the soul, leave the body? And it really bothered me. And I was really looking for answers. Like, I have to get this answer, because if I don't have this answer, how can I do anything? Why should I do anything? So I think, well, there's a ancient sacred teaching. It's called Vedanta. And Vedanta makes a point in the first verse, and it says, therefore. The first verse says therefore, which is strange, because therefore means something happened, right? And so what does therefore mean? Well, all the great gurus who've commented on this said therefore means in your past lives you were evolving, reincarnating through animal forms of life, and you've got a human form of life. A lot of people don't realize that you go through animal forms before you get a human form. And so it says, therefore, now you should inquire, who are you? Why are you here? Where are you going? It says, therefore, after transmigrating through so many lives, now you should inquire. So that was the position I was in. And this sacred teaching says that when you become a human being, that's what distinguishes you, or that's how you take advantage of human intelligence, because you can ask questions. You know, animals are very smart, but you don't see them going to classes in university. You don't see them going to churches and praying. They don't have that capacity. They have like practical. Street smarts. I guess that's kind of a pun. Animals have street smarts because they're on the street. They're very street smart, isn't it? Sometimes they're amazingly smart, and but they don't have that capacity to philosophize. It wasn't given to them. So this book, this sacred literature says, this is what you do. When you're a human being, you should ask these questions. Why? Why questions? And if you ask the why questions, that means you're on the higher echelons of human life. This is what human life is for philosophy, for inquiry. So from my perspective, or my life story, that mission, that purpose, that comes first. Okay, why am I here in the broader schemes, in the long-range spiritual? And now that once I understand that, then I can apply myself to do something that will help me evolve spiritually, help other people evolve spiritually, something that is aligned with who I am as a person, my nature, my abilities, my talents, and you utilize all of that in a way that it will uplift me and uplift the world. Now, we all know how many famous people have killed themselves. And when they kill themselves, everyone's in shock because they say, he was beautiful or she was beautiful, wealthy, famous, I don't understand. Did you have that experience? When somebody famous kills himself, it's such a shock. Because if you have everything but you don't have purpose, then you really don't have much, because there'll be this big emptiness because you don't know why. Now, I'll give you an example. You want to? Go. I'll give you one example, and then my wife's going to give you her words of wisdom. Last night we did a program in London. It was called Wednesday Wisdom, and now we're Thoughtful Thursday. So, when I was 13, I began playing guitar, and pretty much I started writing songs. It was just natural. If any of you are musicians or songwriters, you know sometimes you just wake up and there's a song in your head. And you've got so many things to do in the day, but you have to stop and write this song because it's coming out. Or if you're an artist or a writer or a business person or something, it just comes out. You don't maybe even want it, but it's your nature. You ever have that experience? That's your nature. You're creative, or you think in a certain way, or you have a scientific mind and you think about designing things. So when I was about 17 or 18, I got fed up with doing music because it kind of became boring. Baby, I love you, do. Don't go, baby, don't go, do. Why did you leave me? Now I'm crying, do. Every song was a kind of a variety of that. Of course, in my generation, we sang songs against Vietnam and the government. So, it wasn't all like that. But I was getting very frustrated. Just like I'm thinking, where is this all going? There's got to be something deeper than "Baby, I love you." And it was becoming more and more pale. The more I was playing, it was kind of like a dead end. Hit a dead end in what I was doing. And then I began kirtan. I started chanting, and that was like the lights went off. It's like, oh, this is the perfect view. And plus the other thing, when I was doing music, I was 18. And what does every 18-year-old want to be as a musician? Famous, right? On the stage, thousands of people, play your guitar, everyone's clapping and dancing. Yeah, like what gets better than that? So it's not even about the music, it's about you, isn't it? And your ego. So I didn't want to go that route. And chanting was it was totally different. It was spiritual, divine connection. I could feel it in the soul. I could feel, oh, this is what music is meant to be used for. So that's an example in my life. And in your lives, it'll be different. But whatever your talent is, whatever your ability is, you can find a spiritual avenue for it. And it'll be so much more satisfying than if it's just material. Like, let's say you write a novel, you're a writer. But if you have it, you have a spiritual connection, then you can write something much more profound, much more beneficial for people and beneficial for you to do it. Then it becomes what we call seva. How many of you know what the word seva means? Raise your hand if you've heard that word before. Seva. Seva. Seva means selfless service. Have you ever done selfless service before? Do you realize that if I gave you $500 and I said, there's two things you can do with this $500. You can go to the mall and buy whatever you want, or you can go to the mall and buy clothes and food for poor people, and we're going to go and give them the clothes and feed them. Do you know how much happier you will be if you buy the food and clothes and go feed them? Infinitely more happy, isn't it? When you serve, when you give, that emotion you cannot get from anything else. You cannot get that emotion by grabbing for yourself. You can only get that emotion by giving. And then when I came into the spiritual knowledge, then I realized, well, this is such a powerful thing to give because it's so beneficial, and this is what everybody's looking for. So combining helping people with also contributing to their spiritual well-being, it's amazing how deeply satisfied you become. And if you find your purpose, but you just do it for yourself, you're going to find emptiness. You know the book. You all know the book by Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now, right? So I thought of writing a book called The Power of Now What? And the power of now what? It means, okay, I got everything I want. What do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be a this. Okay, you grow up and you achieve it. I want to be a this. I want to have a house here. I want to do this. I want to go to Europe. I want to do this. And you do it all. And then after you've done it, then the power of now what? Like now what? There's going to be an emptiness there unless it's engaged in service and unless it's engaged in helping others. And you'll be helped by helping others. You'll feel this emptiness. You'll feel like something's missing. And graphically, as we said, graphically seen in the lives of successful people who had it all but felt empty. So this is Janava. As I said, she's smarter than I am. She's gonna bless you with her wisdom.
Hello. So I just have a few thoughts I can share with you today. So I'm thinking in the world of human needs psychology, there's this hierarchy of human needs that was developed by a great philosopher named Maslow. And it's called the 6 human needs. So the interesting thing is that the higher you go in each need, you become realized. It's an actualization of self-realization. And so I'd like to go through them and focus on the top 2 and connect them to the topic for tonight, which is finding your purpose. So the first one is security. And so every human being,
You said the top 2.
The first, yeah, we're going through them.
Oh, okay.
Okay, just relax. You keep looking at me, I'm going to get distracted and not be able to look at them. Okay.
I'll look at you.
The first one, on the lowest rung of the pyramid, you could say, is security. And that is, what every human being needs, knowing where our next meal is coming from and that we have a place to sleep and that, our neighbor's not going to come and attack us and the roof's not going to fall down, and just, this basic sense of security and stability and knowing what comes next. I'm not going to go into them too much because this is a very limited amount of time we have. The next one is almost like the opposite of security, which we call variety, which means some unpredictability in our lives. So, should we have Chinese food tonight or should we have Italian food tonight? Or, your friend comes home and surprises you with some chocolate or flowers, or, a different TV show on Fridays, or, just a little. And now, some people, that's not enough. They want to do like crazy drag racing or bungee jumping, or, everybody has a different level of how they're going to experience security or variety. And there's healthy levels of it and unhealthy levels of it. But again, I can't go into it, but it's a very fascinating subject. So the third one is significance. So everybody needs to feel appreciated and acknowledged and valued. And to some degree, whether it's from our family members or our peers or our co-workers. And, just to show a very unhealthy example of this is people can feel valued by destroying things, destroying people. And I somehow always go to the example of Osama bin Laden, who had such a massive need for significance that he was willing to, practically destroy the world. Or in our country, Donald Trump, he's just got this massive need for significance over caring for other people. So you can see how there are very unhealthy ways to meet a need, but then there are healthy ways, like Mahatma was saying, you know, buying clothes and buying food and going and helping people who are in need. So, and then there's lots of things how we, anyway, I can't get into it, but you get the idea. There's a broad spectrum of how we meet these needs. The next one is love and connection. So every human being has a need to connect with other human beings. And all of us aspire for love. And usually when we think of love, we think of romantic love. But sometimes it's not about romantic love. It's love within the tribe or within the community or within the family. The most important thing is connection. We all need that, and without that, we die. Love is something we aspire for, romantic love, let's say, and some get it and some don't, but we can still actually have fulfilling lives without that, as long as we feel connection and love with other beings. The next one is growth. So if we're not growing, then we're dying. And growing takes place in all different ways. So there's the physical growth of the body, but then there's intellectual growth, right? And there's emotional growth. And we can grow by learning new languages and learning how to ride a bicycle and going to other countries and learning about that country, and so many different topics to learn. But there's also spiritual growth. And that's about learning who we are on a spiritual level, kind of like what you're doing in your Thoughtful Thursday programs. You're getting more in touch with a kind of spiritual growth, and it's a kind of spiritual nourishment. And then the last one is contribution. And contribution means to, see things greater than ourselves, to be of something greater, to be part of something bigger, and to give. And the really interesting thing is that the first four needs, which is security, variety, significance, love, and connection, are needs of the human being, or you could even say like the body. But the last two needs, growth and contribution, are the needs of the soul. And that's where finding our purpose really lies, in growing and in contributing. And I think that finding your purpose, whatever it is, will meet those needs. And by meeting those other needs, by meeting those two needs, contribution and growth, you'll meet all the other needs too. They automatically get met. But what I want to say is that when you've connected to your life's purpose, you find joy. Whatever it is that is your purpose, it should make you really happy, and it should make other people really happy too. And so that's really just what I want to leave you with, is that as you're searching for your purpose, let it be something that brings you a kind of very deep spiritual joy. It's touching you in a deep way, and it allows you to touch other people in a very deep, spiritual, joyous way also.
You made me think of something that we're all dealing with, the problem. Society is defining success for us. This is success. And it gets programmed in there. Since we were very young, it got programmed in there. What is success? Beautiful body, look beautiful, strength, position, the right friends, the right neighborhood, the right clothes, the right job, everything, right? So we have to at least realize, even if we don't think we're so much influenced by this, it all got in there because we grew up in this society, all this, I'm supposed to be this way, look this way. Just like all you, when you go into a store and you see all the magazines on the shelf, mostly it's about 80% women who are more beautiful on the cover of that magazine than they could ever be in real life. And some of those models, sometimes they say, I wish there was this model, what's her name? Judy Crawford, is that? What's her name? Cindy Crawford. She's a model from like the 80s. And she once said, I wish I looked as good as Cindy Crawford does. So you can't look that. So you walk into the store and then you see there's all these beautiful girls and the guys see the guys with the big muscles, you know, the beard and the tattoo and like, so it sends a message subconsciously that that's what success is. I'm supposed to look like them or I'm supposed to be like them, isn't it? Even if you know that's not true, but the message is there. We're getting messages like this. And then from the studies I've read, we get 2,000 messages every day. Buy this, buy this, buy this. And some of the messages are just labels on clothes, but that's a message also, right? You see the Nike label on someone's shoes. It's a message. So I think it's super important that we redefine what success is. Otherwise, we'll be running after the carrot that society has said is success. And then we'll give up. We could give up on the things that are most important, both materially and spiritually for us, in running after this illusion that society has put in front of us. Harisham, what time are we supposed to stop? Like, we've gone too long over?
Yeah, this is an ideal time actually to take a pause and see if people have questions or comments. Yeah. There are a few questions on the chat box already, but they mostly have to do with reincarnation, which is an area we'd love to explore. But since we're on this topic of purpose and finding our purpose, and both of you gave such a wonderful presentation, I'd like to kick it off with a quick question. And all of you, a lot of people here, everybody on here online is obviously thinking about these things and, would like to know what, come closer to finding their purpose. So I invite everyone to jump on the chat box, post questions, comments, or even unmute yourself and speak it out.
I just want to say something, because this is such a big topic, but I actually teach a course on this, but I could, just before you ask questions, I could give you a couple ideas. Imagine the government changed their policy and they said, we've passed a law that everyone must work 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. And everyone is all going to get more money than you need to live comfortably. So you're all going to make $100,000, $150,000. Like, $10,000. We're all going to make $10,000 a month, whether we collect garbage, sweep the street, or do brain surgery. So it doesn't matter what you do. And whatever it is you want to do, the government will train you and they'll find a job. And so now, if that were the case, you don't have to do this now. I just want to throw this out. If that were the case, what would you do? Because I think one of the biggest problems in finding our purpose, mission, dharma, is money, the issue of money. Well, how much will I make? Are there jobs in this area? And you can't always think freely. And my parents wanted to be an engineer, but I wanted to be an artist. There's like two completely opposite positions. I have a student, and she's an engineer and a project manager. And I said, what do you like to do? And she says, I like to paint. I like to dance. I like to coach. Completely opposite of what she's done because she was pushed into that. It couldn't be more of a square in a round hole. So this is a nice question, to meditate on. What would, if all the pay were the same, what would I actually do? And that's a starting point. And I'm going to tell you something funny, but there's a lot of truth to this. A lot of people say, how do I know what my nature is? I go call up your mother and ask her. What did I do when I was a kid? Well, you used to sit around and, take things apart and put them back together. You used to, pretend like you were running a major corporation. You used to always be drawing and painting. You always were reading, you always were teaching all your friends. You were always the one. You were always in charge. So that can be some indication. Okay, so we'll take questions. And Harisham, you'll choose the questions? Is that
Yeah,
right?
I'm going to give people a chance to sort of type their questions in the chat box. Don't be shy. Feel free to ask anything you like on any of the topics, or raise your hand and unmute yourself. I just want to kick it off with a quick question. I think this idea of finding like our profession, I want to distinguish purpose from profession. A lot of people are often confused about what is their profession. Am I going to be a doctor, lawyer, engineer, or a coach, or a therapist, or an engineer? That's your profession. Then there are, as you pointed out at the beginning of this talk, there is a dichotomy between your spiritual purpose and your material purpose, right? Because you can have a spiritual dimension to life, but there's also the need for a material dimension, as your wife pointed out so nicely. We need that material dimension to satisfy those needs for shelter and recognition, and there has to be some sort of channel, right, to satisfy those needs for a standing in this world. I guess I'd like to just bring this up for discussion, which is, let us just look at the word purpose for a moment. What do we define by what is a purpose? Is our purpose just to know what I do for living? Is my purpose what kind of old age I want to have? Is my purpose like what kind of qualities I want to develop as a human being, or what kind of experience of life do I want? Like, I don't know, when I was in my early 20s, my purpose was simply to have experiences. So literally my mom would ask me, how much money do you make? I said, this is how much money you make. How much do you save? Nothing. I was going backpacking through South America and flying to the Caribbean and like jumping in a car and driving to the Rockies. My life was just, that was my purpose, was just to have experiences. And I thought the more experiences I have, the more meaning my life has. And that was my purpose in life at that point in my early 20s. So I guess I'd like to just ask you, you're wise, both of you, you and your wife, both of you are very wise. You've seen a lot of life. And how would you even define this word purpose to begin with? And what are the different dimensions of finding our purpose? Does that question make sense? Because I feel like it's a little bit bigger than just knowing your profession in life, Yeah,
that was kind of the idea of the power of now what. Once you find your material purpose, if you don't connect it to your spiritual development, it's going to be you're not going to be satisfied. But I want to go back because you said something I think is super important. Every life that we live, we're learning, or we're supposed to be learning more about who we are and our spiritual purpose. But in every life, we need a material purpose. And generally, the material purpose is to maintain ourselves on the physical level. So we have food, shelter, clothing, and so forth. And if that physical purpose can be connected with who we are on a core level, we'll be very happy. We'll be as happy materially as we can be. Because there's no more bigger nightmare than to be working at something that goes completely against your nature. It's just depressing. And I think this is really important because I've been practicing spiritual life for 50 years, and I've been observing and teaching people for 50 years. And even if you're on the spiritual path, but you're on the material side, you're not working in a way that's connected with your nature, what inspires you, you could be quite miserable, even though you're chanting your mantras, because those 8 hours a day are a burden. So I've seen, for many people, if those 8 hours a day aren't connected with their nature, it can really negatively impact their spiritual practice because their life is just, it's not the way they want it to be. So I think we can say that if you can find your purpose on the material level that is aligned with your nature, it's going to help establish a foundation, a happy foundation for your life upon which you can build your spiritual life. So I think that's my personal experience. And I've seen this.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. So, and then it's a question I often ask people. I said, if you went to the doctor for your checkup and he said, you're going to die in 24 hours, there's some questions we want to ask ourselves. Am I satisfied that I know what life is about? Am I satisfied that I know where I'm going after death? Am I satisfied that I've done what I could have done for my spiritual education and so forth, my spiritual development? So I think those are good questions to ask us. You know, if I were to die tomorrow, am I satisfied that I'm clear about who I am? Those are the most important questions we need to answer. And unfortunately, we didn't learn that in school, which is a huge travesty of our educational system. Our educational system just prepared us for work.
So what you're
but it
saying
didn't
is,
ans-
what you're
Yes,
saying is that having that sort of material existence that is according to our inner nature will create a fertile ground for a healthy spiritual practice. That's a really beautiful point. I'm gonna take some questions here now because a couple of people have raised their hands and there's a question on the chat box. So Kent, I think I saw your hand first. You want to unmute yourself and share your comment or question?
Yes, thank you. I wanted to know, in such a material world, how do we focus our, how do we, sorry, excuse me, while I try to, how do we intend and come to a place where we're not so influenced? Because it's not just at the store we're faced with all these outer materialistic things that influence our life, and kind of make you shift your focus temporarily, and you get distracted into, you know, having all the things that society tells you to have. My question is, how do you shut all that out and remain focused on what it is? I know that he said that find something in your nature that is going to correct me if I'm wrong. You're saying that find something in your nature that you can, like a job that you don't mind doing, that is helping people, but you're also you know, making money doing it, and you're able to live well off of that. So that will give you a good ground for you to maybe focus on your spiritual side, so that you're not so worried about those providing for yourself.
that's part of the equation. And then the other part of the equation is we have to create some insulation from the effects of society, because the effects of society, especially now, are very pernicious. When I was your age, the social climate was different. It wasn't hitting us so hard. If you want to have some fun, if you can look at the advertisements from the 40s and 50s, it's so interesting. They're so different than they are now. They would just tell you about a product. This is the product. This is what it does. If you like to buy it, this is where you get it. You know, the environment wasn't so intense. And so we have to create some kind of shelter from that. And there are a few things that you can do every day to insulate yourself. One is called sadhana. Sadhana means practice. One is called Sangha. Sangha means association, and one is called seva. Seva is selfless service. So sadhana is a spiritual practice, just like, let's say, you exercise every day, or you study every day. Every day you'll do some kind of meditation, some kind of yoga, some kind of study of sacred literature, and so forth. So it's kind of like, you do that every morning, it's kind of like injection. There's a disease out there, it's called materialism. This is an injection. And if you do it every day, you will see, you will feel, oh, I'm not going to get the flu, I'm not going to get the COVID of materialism because I've been injected. Equally important, maybe if not more, because this is where the impetus comes, is Sangha. Sangha means, who do you hang out with? And you know the saying, I can tell who you are by who you hang out with. And so this is such an important thing to understand, because I may desire to go right, but if all my friends are going left, I'll probably end up going left, because the power of that association is pushing me in a certain direction. And so therefore, when we become interested in spiritual life, we realize I need to be associating with people who are going in that direction, because they become a source of inspiration for me. And sometimes when your inspiration is low, those people will pick you up and they'll be your inspiration. But when your inspiration is low and you're around people who are going in different direction, you'll tend to go that way. So this is extremely important. This is a very insulating principle. And then seva, which is selfless service, seva means that when you have free time, instead of just doing, this is what I want, some of that time is given to others. And it's very purifying, very uplifting. It gets you out of yourself. As they say, you find yourself by losing yourself in service. So my experience, because I do this every day, is exactly this. There's a flu of materialism, and we need inoculation every day. And if you do that, you will feel a certain kind of detachment and a certain kind of clarity. You'll be able to see what to do, what not to do. And the conditioning and the habits that would normally pull you right, if you want to go left, you'll have the strength to go left. You'll have the strength to resist them. But I think it's super important that you all understand, just because you understand something doesn't mean you're going to do it. And a lot of us think, well, I've understood every Thursday night, I understand what's being said, but that's in your head. You actually have to have a lifestyle and a practice and daily that puts it into action, because then it becomes activated. Because just knowing is not enough. How many things have you done that you knew were bad for you and you did it anyway? More than you can count, right? So this is proof that knowledge is necessary, but it really needs to be put into action. And so sadhana, there's the daily practice, and then association, and then seva. It's putting all the knowledge into practice, and then it gets activated because you're doing it. And it's now activating your consciousness, and you're becoming that, which you read about, which is really beautiful. And so my mission in life, my purpose, is to help people become those spiritual teachings, because that's the goal of spirituality, that you become those teachings, that your life is so spiritually aligned that if people just hang around with you, they don't even have to read the books, because they'll see them in you. They'll see you're living that wisdom. So that's the perfection. You live that wisdom, but you have to have daily practice that will protect you. And without that, all I can say is good luck. There's too many distractions. The materialistic influence, it's crazy. It's just insane right now.
Can I add a small reflection to that beautiful answer you just gave?
Yeah.
Kenda, I often think of this scenario you presented as how do we protect ourselves from the world, as kind of like raising a plant. I'll explain it like this. So when you have a plant, the plant requires three things, right? Good soil, water, and a warm temperature, or the right temperature, so to speak. And then it produces a delicious fruit. And the fruit looks nothing like the things that went into taking care of the plant, for instance, In the same way, when we're growing up in this material world, we need these daily three things of seva, sangha, and sadhana. I put it in the chat box. and then it produces the fruit of spiritual realization. Of course, the analogy is not exactly perfect because your spiritual practice is what you end up realizing. So it's not that exact, but you get my point. Is when the plant of our heart is protected and nourished by these three things on a daily basis, it produces a fruit. And that fruit is spiritual realization. It produces the fruit of, you could say, protection from the world or from the negativity of this world. At the beginning of today's Thoughtful Thursdays, remember I gave that analogy of tuning into channels that are coexisting simultaneously in this world? Well, this is the fruit. When you do these daily things every single day, then it allows us it allows us to tap into deeper perspectives. But thank you for that really nice question, by the way. So Tiffany had his hand up. Tiffany, do you want to unmute yourself and share your comment or ask your question?
Okay, yeah, thanks. Okay, hi again. Sorry. Right. So I recently turned 18, right? And like I'm still trying to find the purpose. But where do I start? Where
You
do
recently did what? Can you say it again?
I turned 18, right? And like there's a tendency with the people that like older people in my area. There's like, Tiffany, just go out and live your life because you're young still. And when you reach like 25, you go, no. And I'm like, I don't want to know that. I want to know where do I start to find my purpose, you know? And like spiritual purpose more than material purpose, because money go always come. So yeah.
You want to hear something funny, Tiffany?
Yes, please.
So when we were young, you know, that whole hippie movement was a revolutionary movement. It was a rejection of materialism. So naturally, people thought we were crazy. But when they said I'm crazy, I took it as a compliment because it meant I'm not like you. And if they didn't say I was crazy, I'd start worrying. Oh, there must be something wrong with me because I must be like them. So I want to tell you something my spiritual master said. He said, in every life that you've lived, you've done whatever you want to do in this life, you've actually done hundreds, thousands, millions of times already. It's a very interesting thought. You know, you may have so many ambitions. I want to be this, I want to be that. You've already done that over and over again. But in this life, the thing we haven't done is self-realization. And if we had achieved self-realization in our last life, you know where we would be right now? Not in this body. We wouldn't be here. And the proof that we have further to go is because we have a body. We got the body because we weren't self-realized. So the fact that you want to be self-realized is fantastic. And the fact that people aren't going to understand that is totally normal because they weren't trained. And we just compassionately think, yeah, they don't understand. But it's not that many people in the world do understand, right? And this group here, this is our Sangha. These are people who understand. And these are our real friends. And this is where we get our strength. And when I started this practice, my best friend, I was getting into it, and he says, if you get into this too much, I'm going to pull you out of it. That was his like promise to me, you know. So it's like, you know, it's just the way people are. That's what they think. And so if you know it's right, then that's all that matters. It doesn't matter what other people say. If you know it's right, you'll do it, and you'll stay within your own integrity. Do you want to say something?
I'm just thinking that you have to be strong when you know something's right, even if other people don't agree with you, then that's, you know, that is the test right there. To be true to yourself, to be true to your calling, to be true to that higher calling and that higher purpose. And, you know, if you can be true to it, then that's the success right there. So things that are really worth having and achieving in life are just not easy to attain. We're going to have to work really hard, and, you know, the universe is going to test us and push us and challenge us, and that should just make you feel more inspired and feel that whatever you want, it's that much more worth achieving. So every time you get tested, you know that when you get it, it's going to be even that much better. So, you know, if things are really easy to get, then they just weren't worth that much to begin with. But if it's really hard to, climbing Mount, climbing Mount Everest is a lot different than, climbing the hill in your neighborhood. It's really easy to run up that hill and run back down. It's like, no big deal. But to climb up Mount Everest, you have to do a lot of preparation. And a lot of people would tell you you're crazy for climbing it because it's one of the highest peaks in the world, and there's dangers and so many things. But imagine how you would feel if you got to the top of Mount Everest. You could conquer the world. It would just be a whole new level of consciousness and experience and awareness and reality. So when you got there, you'd know that it was worth it. But it's not that there won't be challenges along the way and naysayers, people who are telling you you're crazy, but just don't let them stop you.
That's a beautiful answer. And just to add to that, John Mama, to your wonderful answer, perhaps something from your own life, and I'm sure you tell a lot of your clients, is great relationships take work, right? Like the kind of relationships that most of us might be having are easy to have, with discontent and disagreement, but great relationships take so much work, and there's always breakdowns and moments of failure. So, to your point about how the things really worth working for in life take work, Tiffany, that is definitely true, because that which is worth cherishing always takes a little work. It goes with relationships, with careers, with anything in life, with spiritual realizations. That which is worth having takes a little work. Got a couple more questions here. Do we have a few more minutes, Mahatma Prabhu and John Mama? You can stay with us for a couple more minutes. Is that all right?
I just wanted to add something. I wanted to add something to that all the difficulties and challenges that we face, like Jonathan was saying, make us stronger, but they're actually necessary. So people who don't support you, who don't understand you, could make you much stronger, because you have to go more within your own values and beliefs and commitments and faith. That this is what a novel about a young boy. He meets an angel. He's 6 years old, and the angel says, in every life you can learn something special. What do you want to learn in this life? And I'll teach it to you. And the boy says, in this life I want to learn forgiveness. So the angel says, okay, well, I'm going to reincarnate and come back as your enemy. And then the boy is caught off guard and said, why would you become my enemy? He said, well, if you don't have one, how are you going to learn to forgive? So the enemies become the teachers, the forgiveness teachers, the tolerance teachers, and so forth. And we need those, because we need to learn those lessons. So, and then also, it's also a challenge, because can you be compassionate with people who don't understand you? Can you be tolerant with people who don't understand you, or who are giving you advice you don't want? So it's self-reflective also. So you can look at yourself. How am I reacting to this? And that can be a kind of a barometer of where you're at and what you need to work on.
Beautiful.
Okay.
Tiffany, hope that answer was satisfying and encouraging. By the way, for those who have to go, have a great night. We'll see you again all next week. For those who have a couple more minutes, we're just going to take 2 or 3 more questions. Actually, we'll just take 2 more. Athena has her hand up, and Coralie has typed a question in the chat box for over 20 minutes ago. Let's take a look at it. Coralie says, could the notion of purpose be an outgrowth of capitalism rather than an innate and predetermined characteristic? So the question is, could the notion of purpose be an outgrowth of capitalism rather than an innate and predetermined characteristic? Is the question clear? There's a supporting quote. Should I read it, or is it clear?
Yes. No, it's very clear. Yeah, I think for most people that's true. But if you're thoughtful, if you're introspective, then it won't be for you, because you'll see it. And like I was saying before, you'll also start to become aware of how you've been conditioned by capitalism, and then you'll work to rid yourself of the conditioning and the habits that you don't want. Sometimes we find ourselves doing something we don't even believe, we don't even value it anymore, but we become conditioned by it. So what I find is it's important to be very individualistic, so that way you can look at things objectively and not be influenced by what is not healthy. And if we're not careful, we can get easily influenced. So to be aware of how we're being influenced and conditioned is very important. And now most of you are in the early 20s or 30s, and it's a time for reflection. Say, this is who I am. This is how society conditioned me, how my parents and education conditioned me, and this is who I am. But what do I want to be? So I look, where do I want to undo? What do I want to undo? What is good? What do I need to change? This is really a time for reflecting on that. Otherwise, you become what society wants you to become, which is a topmost, first-class consumer. Spend more money, keep the economy going. Spend a lot of money, keep Trump happy. Economy goes up. Keep the corporations happy, spend more money. And we say, live off the land, grow your own food. That would totally destroy the economy. They don't want that, right? My spiritual master, he was very much into living off the land. This was like in the 60s. He was really pushing that. He said these cities, they're horrible places, and we should be living off the land, self-sufficient. And then one time he said, the government has no idea what I'm teaching, but if they did, they would kill me. Because if everyone did that, the economy as we know it would totally collapse. You'd be making things locally, right? China would fall apart. Everything you buy would be within, 3 miles of your house. Or you'd either grow it, make it yourself, or your neighbor would.
But I'll be a whole lot healthier, though.
Oh, my God. One of the best things in my life is the times I had living on a farm, because you get to eat real food. And, you can go to the store and buy organic, but if you grow it yourself, it's in a different league. That's my experience. It's like you eat something, you go, I remember eating a tomato that we grew. And it was salty without salt. And I would eat this tomato, would squirt, get everybody full of tomato juice within 20 feet of me. And I'd think, this is the first time I ever ate a tomato in my life. I never tasted a tomato like this. It's such a joy just to have something real and to drink water from the ground that's not contaminated and breathe air that's not contaminated, So it's good to go out in nature just to realize how our life is. It's good to get in a natural environment, and we can see how much we're influenced. And the one thing I want to tell you also, the next time you go to a mall, just reflect on how unnatural a mall is. It's one of the most unnatural environments created, because everything in the mall is aimed to get you to want to possess more than you need, isn't it? The music, the colors, the store signs, the display windows, right? And what's in the mall? What percentage of things in the mall do you actually need? Who would like to say? What do you think? What percentage?
Probably about 95%.
We'll be generous. What's generous? Yeah, so 5% we need, 95% we don't. And if you go home, well, you're already home. You don't have to go home. If you look around your house and say, how much of the things in my house do I actually need? You'll see probably 50, 67% you'll be fine without, or you'd be better.
I'll tell you guys a quick story. Mahatma Prabhu, you'll like this. When I was in college in Notre Dame, there was at the museum on campus, there was a traveling exhibit of a photographer who went around the world, and he went to Mongolia, and he went to different families in Mongolia. He had them assemble all their possessions outside their yurts, and he took a picture. And he went to the Western world, Sydney, Melbourne, New York, cities in Iowa. He took pictures of people's possessions outside their houses, and he put them next to each other, and it was mind-blowing, just the amount of stuff that people, it was crazy, I remember my favorite image was this one family with their yurt and their 2 yaks and their family and all their possessions, and there was this American suburban home with like 6 televisions, a boat, it's just like ridiculous. Anyways, but not to criticize people having things, but at the end of the day, if you don't know why you have them and like they don't actually make you happy, then what's the point, right? Just buying things to buy things,
there's a word in Sanskrit, it's called Maya. How many of you heard this word Maya before? You raise your hand. Maya, actually, the actual meaning, well, there's many meanings in Sanskrit, but the meaning we're discussing here is illusion. And so sometimes people ask me, well, how would you define Maya? And one way I define it is working at a job you don't like to make money, to buy things that can never make you happy. That's Maya. It's like the donkey. It's like what is it? What do they call it?
Hamster, the hamster that runs.
Treadmill. Yeah, it's a treadmill. So, and the important thing to know is on the spiritual level, you already are happy. You don't need anything external because as spiritual beings, you already are. And so the more we try to find it externally, the more we alienate ourselves from that happiness that's within us. And then if we're introspective, thoughtful, and we have some spiritual knowledge, we'll realize I'm just alienating myself and I'm trying to replace my spiritual emptiness with something material, and it doesn't work. Never has and never will.
But to your point, and I want Athena to ask her a question. I'm just planting the seed of this idea, and maybe it's something we can discuss in a future talk. But to your point about, the happiness that we're looking for is already within. But at the same time, Janava made this beautiful point about how as human beings, there is a series of progressions. So there is a time in our life when we do need some things from the material world to feel a sense of complete.
Yeah, of course.
I think that's always a tough act to balance, how much do I take from the world? I need something from the world, but how much do I take?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's a tough act to balance.
Yeah, there's a threshold. There's a threshold. If you don't have enough, then it's going to have a negative effect. And if you have too much, it's going to have a negative effect. There's a balance.
There's a balance.
What do I need to be peaceful and so forth? My spiritual master said it's like salt. A certain amount of salt is going to make it taste better. Too much salt, you ruin it. So people think, okay, I get this, and this. It made me happy, so I just get more of this, and it'll make me happier. You hit a threshold, and it doesn't make you any happier. That's what we need to see. What's my threshold? Where I have enough now, everything's good. If I add beyond that, it's like I've already eaten enough, and I'm eating too much. Then I'll just get sick. So it's something like that.
In economics, we call it the declining return principle. After a certain point, okay, so Athena, we'll take your question, and I think then we'll call it a night. It's already quite late for everyone. Athena, would love to hear what you have to share or ask. Go ahead.
Hare Krishna, thank you so much for hosting this session. It was so long. And Mahatma Prabhu, you're just so practical, so engaging. Janava Prabhu as well. My question actually is actually for Janava, and Mahatma would also love to hear your thoughts as well. But it's dealing with the nature and the purpose of the soul and the soul's needs. When you had brought up the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, of course Maslow was a psychologist, but I assume he had created this hierarchy looking at human beings, patterns that you've seen, but I don't know if he was a spiritualist, but he created this based on conditioned souls from a spiritual perspective, unrealized, under Maya. So I'm curious, do these 6 also apply though to the needs of the pure soul, completely uncovered? And if I had think about it, so say we all need security. Okay, we are dependent, so we must take shelter. You either take shelter in Maya or Yoga Maya, the internal energy. But if you kind of go up, I'm curious, does each rung, does this also apply to the soul, on the soul level? And if so, what does that look like? Thank you.
Well, it doesn't really apply to the pure soul, but there's so few of those individuals on this planet that it applies to probably everybody on this call. So no, when you're in a pure state of consciousness, you're transcendental, and you've transcended all of those needs, and all you're thinking about is service to God, service to the other living entities, and just you're full of love and compassion for every living being, the animals, the plants. You don't see things the way we see things. you know, I see people and deers and trees and sofas and houses, but when someone's in a completely pure state of mind, they see spirit. They don't even see the covering over the spirit soul. And if it's a material object like a sofa, they'll actually like see the atoms within that sofa. Their vision is completely different than our vision, and their motives and their energy and their behavior and their feelings and their thoughts, you know, it's practically inconceivable. But by reading the literatures that describe what those seers are like, written by people who are those seers and were those seers, then we can understand. But the 6 human needs hierarchy that Maslow has written about, it's true he was a conditioned soul, but he was also a very, very religious man. He came from an amazing religious background, and he had a sense, you know, just like Socrates and Thoreau and, you know, great thinkers and spiritualists throughout history, although they may not have known exactly what we learn from, you know, the exact teachings from the Vedas. They had a sense, and they had their own spiritual realization, which had a lot of value.
I can add something to that. When I first learned about the 6 human needs, I thought, if we look at the lives of saints, they have the need for security, but it's not within this world. So you could say, like, their security is their sadhana. Their security is their mantra. Their security is their seva. So they find shelter on the spiritual. And so I often thought about, well, could you apply these transcendentally? And it wasn't, I don't think it was Maslow's intention, but there are many ways that I thought it could be applied. Say, how would obviously contribution, right? It's born out of compassion, and then a advanced spiritually person has tremendous amounts of compassion. So contribution, knowledge, growth, they're always growing so they can give more if they grow. So I think there are counterparts. As with anything, there can always be a spiritual counterpart. Is that okay?
Could I clarify? Actually, I apologize. Just quickly, and I apologize if this is a little more esoteric for some, but if the assumption, at least in the Gaudiya, Vaishnava, and Bhakti yogis, we have a form and we have already what we call a sarup in the spiritual world. And to your point, Mahatma Prabhu, is that, you know, so it sounds like, yes, of course, as Janava said, it was created by, say, a conditioned soul, but ways, and they had some sense, the realizations, and could it apply to our sarup? So for example, and I just want to pick your brains, and is there, you know, what does growth look like in Goloka Vrindavan for someone? And if it's contribution, is it that, you know, how am I doing to please Krishna? Is it variety that, you know, not everyone looks the same and everyone is a mother, and then there's, you know, so in what you said, and you had mentioned security, again, taking shelter of Krishna's lotus feet. So in essence, those 6 do apply, but maybe it's not written in Vedic scripture, that it's not right. Sorry, that.
Yeah,
thank you.
I mean, you could write it that way if you wanted to. It's just
Madhav, real quick before you begin your answer, may I make a quick comment for everyone?
Yeah.
Okay, just to give a quick comment to everybody. The question that Tina is asking, she's a long-standing practitioner of Bhakti Yoga. It's a spiritual tradition, and just to bring everybody on board, she's asking a very specific question about a particular aspect of the philosophy of Bhakti Yoga. So some of you may be feeling a bit like, what is she talking about? What is all this all about? Don't feel lost. It's okay. You know, Mahatma's going to answer her question. And sometimes it's a little hard to always make things a little relatable. So you may not fully, there's a lot of detail and things that he would have to go into to actually translate the question into language that all of us can sort of relate to and appreciate. So just, you know, forgive him if you're a little confused, but just to bring all of you sort of on the same page, she's asking a very, very sort of technical question about a very particular aspect of the Bhakti Yoga philosophy. So it may not be fully relatable or easy to kind of catch, but anyways, we love hearing the sound of Mahatma's voice. So whatever he says sounds good. even if it's
Yes, I
Well,
apologize. I'm taking advantage of
Go on.
asking Mahatma and Janava, and Maha is great at making things super approachable and relatable. So thank you.
So yeah, so with that context, I would, please go ahead, Mahatma Prabhu.
yeah, I'll maybe broaden the context of it. That there's so many things in this world that have spiritual counterparts. So something may look purely material, but there are counterparts to it. So we can take something which is material and spiritualize it, whether it's philosophy or money or possession or whatever. It can be used for a spiritual purpose. So I would say, without getting into it in detail, I would say yes, you could see spiritual counterparts for all these things. It may not be explained that way in sacred literature in the Vedas, but you could connect the dots. And I've always felt like that. You agree?
Thank you for that answer.
Yeah, so any, this brings up the point of what is spiritual. Because someone will look at something and go, well, that's money, it's material. No, money's not material or spiritual, or nothing's material or spiritual, but when it's used with the right consciousness, it becomes spiritual. When it's used, you can take something spiritual, like we were talking in the beginning, and use it for a material purpose, and then the material thing becomes spiritual. Take something material, use it for a spiritual purpose, to become spiritual. So again, it's about consciousness and utilization.
Thank you for that. Athena, I hope that answer was satisfying. Or wasn't?
Now,
Yes, thank you so much.
you can think about how those 6 human needs can be spiritually applied. That's your meditation for the next week, and I'm sure you'll figure it out.
Thank you.
I would also like to add that exactly what you just said is, I think, what Prabhupada is referring to as the art of work in the Bhagavad-Gita, right? An amazing spiritual text. For those of you who don't know, the Bhagavad-Gita actually teaches this principle of how do you satisfy your material needs and in a spiritual way and actually be elevated by them. So with that, we'll call Thoughtful Thursdays to a close. Wonderful to be here with everyone every week, and looking forward to seeing all of you next week. Just a couple of quick announcements. We are starting a book club on the Bhagavad-Gita. It's going to be a summary study of the Bhagavad-Gita, one of our core yoga texts. It's going to be about 8 to 10 weeks long. It's going to start on October the 4th. So if you haven't already expressed interest, I know a couple of you already have sent me your names and emails. If you haven't already expressed interest, then feel free to send a message to Adam the Monk. He's right here on Instagram. All of you are familiar with who he is. Also, you can look up the Chicago Sanctuary, which is our Instagram handle. You can post a message there. What else? The recording for today's session is going to go up on our YouTube channel. If you look for Thoughtful Thursdays on YouTube, we have our own YouTube channel, and the recording is going to go there. Canda's interested. Great, Kanda. Can you send a message to Adam on Instagram, please? That'd be wonderful. And what else? Mahaprabhu, thank you so much. And Janavama, thank you so much to both of you. Very grateful that you took time out of your evening to be with us tonight and share with us your realizations and insights. Can't wait to have you back on Thoughtful Thursdays. All of you have a wonderful week. And I just want to end with this one last comment. We heard a lot of great things tonight. See if you can, after this talk is over, take a moment to write down on a piece of paper, what was the most impactful thing you heard tonight? What was the most impactful realization you had? Because if we don't learn to capture these pieces, these nuggets of wisdom, and try to live with them, then they kind of just pass through our life. So it'll only take 30 seconds. Just take 30 seconds out of your day, but right when this call is over, and just write down on a piece of paper, like, this is what really hit me tonight. This is what I'm taking home with me. Because if you do that, I guarantee it's going to make a huge difference in your spiritual life and practice, and we'll learn to be more mindful of good ideas and wisdom. Mahatma, would you like to have the last word? You're the sage here, so I should step aside and let you have the last word here. Or your wife, either or. Anyone here. We have 2 sages online.
It's nice being with all of you. Nice seeing you. I think some of you were here last time. And we'll come back again. And Mahatma Das is my name. If you Google that, you'll find. I have books. I have a course on forgiveness. I have websites, social media. If you're interested, you can check me out.
All right, with that,
Bhakti education. You can, if you want to take the forgiveness courses, Bhakti education. Just Google Bhakti education, and that's a very interesting course.
I'm typing it in the chat box now for those of you who didn't catch the spelling of that. So I just typed it in the chat box.
And I will send, I have some meditations for chanting that I will send to Harisham if he wants to use them. And
Oh, yeah.
they may be really useful for you.
Would love that.
Okay.
Have a great night, everyone. See you
Thank
all next
you.
week. Cheers. Be wise. Be happy.